So last month in November 2018, I finally completed my MBA dissertation and handed that in. This came after a month of really quite a lot of work because I organized Black History Month in Milton Keynes and also a health scare. And so it was a very stressful time. So when I finally submitted my thesis, I said to myself, well, I'm going to have a good laugh. I'm going to go watch a Tiffany Haddish film. And so that weekend, my husband and I went down to the cinema and we watched Nobody's Fool with Tiffany Haddish, produced and directed by Tyler Perry. As a filmmaker, I love Tyler Perry. I love his style of filmmaking. I love the way he's able to make the dollar work, basically. The way he just chooses one location, sets his film there, and completely reduces costs, allowing him to build a portfolio and build income and value into what he does. I absolutely admire his model and I'd like to copy that. And obviously I love Tiffany Haddish because in Girls Trip she was hilarious, and watching her interviews and stuff like that, she's quite funny. So I thought I'd have a good laugh. I have to say though that during the screening, during the viewing of the film, on several occasions I felt extremely uncomfortable. And when we left the cinema, I actually felt embarrassed by what I had seen as a black person, given that the entire cinema, well, the 10 of us in there anyway, it was just my husband and I that were black. And also note that the film was not being shown in Milton Keynes, it was shown in Leighton Buzzard, which is about a half-hour drive from here, and it was the last cinema, in the last screening room in the corner. So all of that says something. But to go and watch the film and not feel good about it, I thought was quite disappointing, because that had nothing to do with the fact that it wasn't in Milton Keynes or that it was in the corner of a cinema. I thought, there were moments in the film that were just absolutely hilarious. They were laugh out loud, don't care who's listening, laugh till your belly hurts moments. So they were really, really good. At other times, I felt the laughter was forced. They wanted you to laugh. They were literally, as my husband would say, they were literally using a sledgehammer, knocking you on the head, saying, this is funny and you must laugh. It was just really forced. And most of the viewers who were white didn't get that humor anyway. So there wasn't even that, people weren't responding in the way that the filmmaker, Tyler Perry, wanted that response to be. The other thing I didn't like about the film was the way they kept using the N-word. I understand that in America, men or black men refer to each other using the N-word, but that word has connotations. It has negative connotations, and I understand that we black people say they're owning the word, and that's fine, but I think, and I can't speak for that culture or that word, I have no right to say what they can or can't do. It's not my experience, so I can't comment on it. But I think that when you're making a film that is coming out of your circle to circles where people don't participate in that culture, in calling each other that word, it makes for very uncomfortable viewing. It was just not necessary to call the men by that name, by that word, by the N-word. These men were gentlemen, these men were hardworking, these men had lifted up themselves, or the main actor had lifted up himself via his bootstrings. And to be calling them, referring to them in that way, I thought was quite demeaning and belittling of who they were, who they are in the film, what they've achieved, what they've done, So I think that as a filmmaker, Tyler Perry, who is one of my heroes, really needs to relook at how that word is used. And not just Tyler Perry, but other filmmakers, especially black filmmakers, need to just not limit yourselves within that space and that name or that word. but look beyond your borders at how those of us who are not part of your world will respond to that. Another thing that made me uncomfortable, here we go with the stereotypes. Are all black women in America, or rather are all black mothers in America, drug dealers or drug addicts? Like, do they all smoke? Are they all high on something? Is that what you were telling us? Is that what you were telling us about black women in America? Mothers, is that what they do? They all smoke, they all drink, they're all always high. What are the narratives you're putting out there? You need to start re-looking at these. We've seen these stories, we've heard these stories. I think it's time to begin to put out some more positive images so that people can relate to us in that way. The other thing about it was the star of the male star of the film, who, by the way, I love him, he's really good looking. And I love his intensity when he acts. He's in there. But he'd come from prison too. Are all black men in America in prison, or been to prison, or going into prison, or out of prison? I mean, are there any American men who have just not been to prison, who've just gone to school, gone to university, got a job, worked, or started a business, succeeded? Are there black men in America who have never been to prison? I understand the narrative in terms of how the system abuses young men and tends to easily just, without a thought, throw a black man into prison. I understand that. But I think it's time that filmmakers, storytellers, especially filmmakers of color, if you have the opportunity and, and the capacity to tell stories of black people, make them positive. Move away from the stereotypes. Move away from the stereotypes and tell the stories of yourself. Has Tyler Perry been to prison? Not a day. Can we start to tell positive stories about ourselves? Can we start to tell stories that inspire, that cause people to aspire? Why must we always carry these narratives along? Every black man must go to prison. Every black man must have made a mistake that put him in trouble with the police. That is not the case. That, unless I'm wrong, you people in America, if you watch this, you tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me that is the story of all of you black men, and then these films would continue or begin to make sense. Because right now they don't. Who's going to tell your story? The mainstream Hollywood and global television, Western television has told your story from their point of view and painted these negative images of you, of us. Now that you have the means to tell your story, our story, can you make it positive? Can you tell a story that's different from the worldwide Western white narrative?